Uh, Good afternoon. I'm Michael Bowes, Executive Director of the Association for the Wolf Lake Initiative, and this is our final session of this year's Active Living Faire. And what we're doing is sitting around in a small group, talking about memories of Wolf Lake. And what I've distributed is sections of a chapter I have in my history of our organization, Association for the Wolf Lake Initiative, and this is a collection of memories of Wolf Lake by individuals on different occasions. At one of our winter festivals, I believe, we sat around and recorded individuals' recollections of the watershed, just not Wolf Lake, but George Lake, and individuals' experiences when they were growing up and different phases of their life. And that produced quite a few pages, but we also encouraged others to email in their memories, and we've also have encouraged folks at other events to do this. And every once in a while you'll get something in the mail or you'll get an email, and this year I just added to the collection. It was a student. She was working on her doctoral degree in California. She was a resident of San Francisco, but she had grown up in Heguish. She submitted a paper which contrasted her early childhood in Heguish with her later travel experiences throughout the world. It was fairly well traveled, and her interest was in psychology, but she used this as a basis for her paper. And it was interesting because half the paper was her recollections from childhood compared with her kind of outdoor activities in California. And she had two different locations, both water, Wolf Lake, and then a stream where she would go to relax and commune with nature, and as therapy, as individual therapy. So, but I was most interested in her childhood in Heguish, as well as her experiences in California. I spent a decade out there. So it wasn't her recollections that I added to it. Her parents were ailing parents, were living in Wisconsin, and so she visited them. And on her visit, she had asked them to write down their memories of Wolf Lake. So it was their entries I added. But anyway, so you never know who's going to contribute and in what way. That's right. and those memories are not in this. This is several years old, but it is a collection of memories. And I think at an earlier gathering that we had taped, Lee Botts talked about the sign that prohibited radioactive waste being dumped into Wolf Lake. And so after that gathering, it was out here, I think, at this shelter. And so after that, I said, why don't you put this down on paper and send it to me? And so she did, with the photo of her daughter, who was a teenager at the time, of the sign. So people would come to me and ask me, why was that sign there? And I wasn't here when the sign was up, so I don't remember it. I couldn't remember it. Yeah. I couldn't answer the question. I said, you're not the first one that's asked me, but I said, I don't know anything about it. So when she came up with her explanation, I knew some of the people she had discussed this with, because she was editor of the Hyde Park Herald for a while, and some of these involved University of Chicago faculty members who I've also worked with previously. So a lot of her explanation of that sign was involved individuals that I know. But this, again, is only a story that she was told. But there are other things in here, and unless we have some memories, your own memories that I haven't heard yet.
My brother was a little bit older.
Yeah.
Okay, he was World War II vet, but when he was a kid, he was very much interested in sailing and whatever. So he would mostly sail off Calumet Park, or Maple Street or whatever. But he has this memory, and I was just a toddler, but I remember them talking about it, that they did ice boating on Wolf Lake.
Well, they still do.
Yeah.
And
how about that?
You know who Dave Dabberton. And Dave Dabberton is one of them. And I can remember once coming in, he had some scars on his face or something, and he was out ice boating, and there was had a little bit of an accident or something, but he still goes out. In fact, at one of our winter fests, the temperature was 5 above 0, and he would give a morning talk on ice boating. And we would have an ice boat out in front of the Environmental Education Center. Remember that?
Yeah, that was great.
And I have a photo of one time people in shorts and short sleeve shirts in the middle of January. And so some of our winter fests weren't that wintry. But that morning he gave his talk, and then he said he invited people to go out and to check out George Lake, because he was going to. Because that's shallower water, and we thought that would most likely be frozen. It hadn't been 5 above for only 24 hours, so it hadn't really been a cold winter. And we ended up not going out ice boating because there was some open water still in George Lake. But he wanted to go out, and it was 5 above, and you get up to 50 miles an hour if you're on a large lake, and with that 5 above air coming at you, I said, I'm thinking to myself, I wouldn't go out with you. And actually, it turned out that the ice wasn't thick enough, so they never did. But yeah, they still do it, and I think they're out of their minds sometimes, because you will see them out of the ice boats flying along, and there's open water off to their side. I mean, they know enough to stay on the ice, but I'm often thinking, well, and you never know about Wolf Lake, because sometimes you can walk in it, and at other times it's 12 feet deep or 16 feet deep. So sometimes I think to myself, those folks are crazy. But yeah, they still do it, and it's just and you have to look for them, because and the winter has to be cold enough. Last winter was cold enough, and it's the same thing for ice fishermen. You go out there in February where it's, everything's melting, and they're out there on the ice fishing. And in fact, there's a story in here by, you can find it, it's by Jay Kuzniar, and he's talking about that swimming on the Avenue K channel, and in which they encountered metal object at the bottom of the channel, and then they couldn't figure out how that car got there, and then they thought it out and said, oh yes, now we know, because some guy was out there ice fishing, and the car goes through.
Okay, how about almost the last page? Is that it?
Yeah.
Were there any stories about the Nike set?
Yeah. Who
Really
contributed
lovely.
to that was Rod Sellers. Has some entries on that. So yeah, and there were several others too. Nike site. This is one of my entries. I had 2 entries in it, and I might want to read that, because it was dates to 2008, and it was at an Active Living Fair, like we're having today, except this was in the morning of it, but it was at William Powers Conservation Area here. And there's a photo that accompanies the memory, and it's of, and I'll just read it to you, and then I can explain later. One of the fears when organizing festivals is that a speaker will fail to show, whether through miscommunication or a last-minute family emergency. It happened. This occurred at the 2008 Active Living Fair. But the gods, through intermittent rain showers, were smiling on us that day. As we completed our setup of tables at Shelter 1 at William Powers Conservation Area, a pair of curious cyclists from Chicago's Chinatown stopped by. We learned from them, as they struggled with their English, that several years earlier, the two had left mainland China to live their retirement years in the States. They visited with various exhibitors that morning and stopped by our farmers market. As they were about to leave, I realized that the leader of our next session was quite late. So I asked if one of them would lead us in Tai Chi. The female, and I can't pronounce her name, Shu Ying, agreed, and with no need for words, led us through the session, oh so gracefully. Isn't that?
What was your other entry, Michael?
Oh,
Field surgeons at their finest.
yeah. What page is that?
I think it's like like
95.
95.
This, yeah. And this is actually a little bit longer entry, but I can read it. It was a pleasant summer Saturday as I strolled toward the boat launch at William Powers Conservation Area. I stopped to talk to a firefighter from Chicago's Inglewood neighborhood who had accompanied about a dozen Boy Scouts on a fishing expedition at Wolf Lake. Taking Scouts fishing was a program adopted by firehouses throughout Chicago. And I didn't know that until that morning. As I walked to the other side of the boat launch, I stopped to talk to a fisherman, and we both noticed a bird flopping around in the tall grass. As we gently picked up the bird, we noticed it had entangled itself in fishing line, which occurs, I think, here more often than people know. The bird, which easily fit in my hand, was black. The fishing line was black. It was difficult to follow the line as it wrapped around the body. An older fisherman joined us as we carefully freed one wing. The line had looped 7 or 8 times around the area where the wing was, attached to the upper body. This was going to take us a while. For a full 10 to 15 minutes, the three of us huddled intently over our patient. Every turn of the body we felt would finally free the bird, only to find that it had not. With the bird so close, I was trying to identify it. I couldn't. It was black from head to toe, or claw, except for a white breast and a white edging to its tail feathers. And there was a black tuft atop its crown. As we unwrapped the final loop, the patient failed to respond. We looked at each other as if to ask, what now? There was a tree nearby, and as the younger fisherman lifted the bird to the nearest limb, the bird suddenly regained its senses and flew off. The three of us followed its flight for several seconds. Then we looked at each other again, relaxed, and smiled at a job well done. We then resumed whatever we had been doing. When I returned home, I checked my Peterson bird book to learn that we had returned one juvenile eastern kingbird to roam a waiting sky. Yeah, isn't that neat?
Wow.
Yes.
And
So,
that was,
Michael, tell us about this Wolf Lake Festival and what has been happening here this weekend.
okay, well, this was very interesting, and it dates back to about a year ago, and none of you know this, but I think it was Jeff Benson, director of the Environmental Learning Center there at the next to the Lakeshore offices. He had a meeting with the principal at Clark High School
Oh.
in Northampton, Robertsdale. And I can't remember if there was others there. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 of us, but I don't know who else was there. I just remember Jeff and Robert. So we talked about using the watershed for students and how to involve students in it. This week, there were 24-foot long canoes, about 6 of them, and they had arranged to have an outing. What they had done was he was seeking funding to hire this group from Minnesota to come down and give canoe trips to Northwest Indiana students with Clark High School and middle school, I think. Middle school as well. And for 3 or 4 days, and then they went to Miller District in Gary, and maybe to Portage, and then after that, I think they continued on toward the East Coast. But anyway, that was their job, was to introduce. It's not necessarily always urban kids, but it turned out they went to a lot of urban areas. But to kind of introduce them to outdoor life.
Especially the ones who are right here, located right on a body of water.
It's amazing, but as anyone I've been doing festivals for 14 years. At one time, we used to have 80 students, high school students here on the weekend from Bowen, from George Washington High School, and they would come out and they would attend the festivals, participate in them, and then all of a sudden it became liability issues with the schools.
Oh, yeah.
So suddenly that kind of was the end to the field trips during the week, and then the weekend, no way, where the school's going to be involved in field trips on the weekend. So all of a sudden, this opportunity for students to enjoy outdoor living is gone. But I was so encouraged that that Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore was involved in Lake County youth, and that hasn't been the case. Maybe I was the only recipient of it, because at our Winter Fest we used to borrow 15 skis and boots and poles from the Learning Center, but that was their only involvement in Lake County. And so maybe now, in fact, I'm going to follow up and see if we can get a commitment both from the Environmental Learning Center there, as well as from the National Lakeshore and from the City of Hammond Public Schools, that we can continue this effort and we can plan for it, and we can, and get some funding for it, because I think that experience this week encouraged funders to help out. But earlier in the week, were they on this side of the state line? That group? Was that group over here on the? Because
With the one with the canoes?
Yeah.
Yes. At the dedication, they were in the channel. It was a good event. It was
I
impressive.
figured it was. Now, have they moved into the facility yet?
Yeah.
So their offices are there?
There's a video on YouTube, and it shows they give a good. Chris gives a real rundown on the inside and how it works.
Okay. Because you said that, I just haven't had time to look at it, because the other thing is, but this goes back to what I've been trying to do for 15 years, is to get the west half of Wolf Lake to talk to the east half of Wolf Lake. After all, it's one watershed, and it's just absolute silliness to try to do something in half a watershed. I mean, how can you manage half a watershed when you can't control what's going on the other half? And not only that, is when you're combined efforts, then everything else is so much easier. Getting funding, um, coordinating events so you don't conflict, one doesn't conflict with the other. And it's very difficult because you're dealing with state government, different state agencies, and even in uh, planning Watershed B, the vision document in 2000, 2001, it was you had to get a federal agency who was involved in both states to kind of be the facilitator, to be the convener, or to be around. So in order to get anything to do with the watershed, you need federal presence. And one of the things that's going on now, we have a company that's polluting with flake, and the company is on the Indiana side of the state line, but the pollution is going into the Illinois side. And it was difficult to even educate Illinois as to what was happening. And it took picket lines in the loop to bring it to their attention. And why do you have to do that? And so while a year and a half after, we're still waiting for a resolution, and we may have to wait another half a year for it. But it just takes government a long time. But you know what? And this for both of you might be interested in this. When I went to, we moved our offices in March to Calumet College, and so when I got there, I was just trying to explain to people what I was doing with the watershed, and so they all reacted, well, you know, we're in Indiana College, and I looked at them. I said, you know, I beg to differ. I said, half of your student body live in Illinois, and they didn't even, I think some of the faculty members did not know. Well, why don't we start a book discussion group about Calumet history? And I said, and so this was at a meeting with others, and so I said, well, why don't we have speakers and a discussion? And so what's developed from that discussion was that a monthly forum on Calumet Revisited. So on the first Tuesday of every month, we'll be having a speaker for a half an hour and a discussion group follow. And it will be at the library on the first floor. So the first forum will be October 7th. And David Daverton will talk about his book, The Walkable, Rideable, Riding Robertsdale. I'm not sure if that's the complete title, but he'll be talking about that. The speaker for November 4th, which is election night, is hopefully Rod Seller, because I want to get the historical societies involved in it. The third speaker will be Cynthia O'Doran, because she brings in 3 communities, plus she's working on the 4th. She's working on a book on Hegelich, but she's already written about Little Calumet, the Highway 30, and the South Shore Railroad. So, and then I'm scheduling speakers January through May. So we'll just have 9 months of the forum.
Do you have anything you want to say to summarize this weekend's activity, summarize the experience?
Oh, well, you know, we have 3 festivals a year. The Active Living Faire is in, it's always the last weekend in September. And, you know, the focus is on activity and healthy living, nutrition, and that. And so we have speakers on these different subjects, particularly like our Winter Fest, we have the Underground Railroad, things that are kind of exciting. But I think it's because we kind of focus on activity and getting out. Mary went on the hike this morning with Dr. Yum Choi along the North Channel. You've been on it before, and that was a neat hike, right? And this was your first time. So, yeah, and
It's great.
you learn so much. But we also have the Winter Festival during the Martin Luther King Memorial Weekend. And we had that for one day, and in the morning, so we'll be having sessions in the morning. That's when we'll hopefully borrow some skis and have enough snow so kids can be on their skis for the first time, just like being in the canoe for their first time. People don't forget the first trip in a canoe, and I don't think people forget their first day on skis.
Okay.
But we'll have that, and maybe a session on Underground Railroad, and we always have the guy from Native American Artifacts, and the Winterfest is a little bit more attended because occasionally we even have hikes in the winter, or we'll have birding events that take people outside. But for the most part, we're inside and just listening to presentations. And then we have our third is our Wetlands Festival over Memorial Day weekend. That's a 2-day event, and that's when we get wet, helping people loading canoes and kayaks. And in the past, we've had archery. So
You also wrap up the month-long
Yeah.
summit too.
that's right. We have the reading of the arts. So we start out with on October 18th, Saturday, and we do a car van tour of galleries in southeast Chicago, northwest Indiana. That will be on October 18th, and then on the 24th, a Friday, we'll have our opening of the show at noon. We'll have an artist forum at 1, and at 2 we have 2 artists who come in and give a workshop on art by using recycled materials. So I think they'll do their own artwork, and it's going to be a brief workshop, maybe 30-minute, 60-minute workshop at 2. And these will be 2 artists from the 119th Street Artists in Whiting, and they helped actually kick off the tour because they had an opening where they had a couple shows, and one segment was on art and recycled materials. So, and they had a demonstration there. And they had live entertainment. They had Munster High School Chorale performing. So that was technically the start of the tour, gallery tour. Then after that, we have in the evening. The reception starts at 5:30. We have live entertainment, and then our speaker this year we have a speaker on the nexus of art and nature, and it will be Marcia Brown, photographer from I think from Gary Miller district, and she actually worked at the Art Institute, and she also worked at the School of the Art Institute. So she's been around, and so she'll be there, and we'll have about 15 artists involved, including